Hey, welcome to the No Have Cakes podcast. My name is Jim Sabelico, and today we have an amazing guest, Dr. Amy Tiffany, who's going to be here to help us kind of understand a tremendous amount about postpartum health, the mental aspect of it, the relationship between husband and wife, trying to figure out communication, trying to figure out all the different things that happen in that time of your life. It is a tremendously difficult and quickly changing time in your life. And it could lead to a whole heck of a lot of problems if you don't handle it correctly. So in this conversation today, we're going to kind of have that conversation, give you some perspective on, hey, how do you show up for each other? What does a relationship look like in that phase? How do you show up for yourself? We're going to answer these questions and kind of talk about what it means to be the best version of yourself and really understand all the dynamics of relationships, your fitness, your core values as a family, kind of how all those things intertwine. So if you're someone who's in that phase or you know someone who is, let's jump into this conversation. I think that you will get a tremendous amount of value from it.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Is it morning where you're at?
It is, yes.
Okay.
It is 10:30 here. I'm not sure where in the world you are.
I'm in St. Louis, so it's 9:30 in the morning.
All right. There you go. Good. Well, good morning to you.
Likewise.
Good. Are you good to go? We can
Whenever
just
you're
roll
ready.
right into
Yep,
it.
let's do it.
All right. Awesome. I love that. I think this will be a fun conversation. I'm excited to do something that I feel like not a lot of people actually do in this scenario is shut up and listen. Because as I understand, you are an expert in the women's health realm, and I, as a dude, am not. So I would love to start there and just kind of get a brief understanding of what exactly is your expertise, and we'll roll from there.
Love it. So I am an expert in continuing to learn. That is what I will claim. And I started my journey as a physician. I'm a medical doctor by background. I'm trained in internal medicine. And as soon as I finished medical school and residency, decided that was boring. So I would go get an MBA and then thought coaching sounded good. So just kind of kept doing all the consummate learning. At the same time, ended up having 4 children. And my husband said, they're not going to have a college degree if you keep doing this. So let's nail it down and do something that you love. And so I created my business, and today I work primarily with women who are 35 to 55 and help them as they are navigating the toughness of having a kid, going through perimenopause. I'm pretty sure all the dudes in their life love me more than the women in their life do because we're getting through the hard stuff that just makes life messy, from the physical to the mental, the spiritual, all of it. So that's what we do.
I love that. And so as I kind of understand, and again, I'm no expert by any means in this realm, as I understand, there's a lot of different systems that are kind of going wonky, if you will, all at once, and basically fighting each other in this weird civil war that causes what I assume to be some level of internal chaos.
Beautiful.
What is actually happening?
So what's normally what we're dealing with in the postpartum phase specifically is all of the disruption after pregnancy. And so you've got the mom who's geared herself up to have this kid, and things, I'll go back to what I was doing before. It'll just take a little bit of maneuvering here and there. And it turns out that these are like massive changes you have to make just to continue your daily habits, to be able to be physically active. How do you do that when you have a 3-month-old standing by you? And how do you get enough sleep when they wake up 6 times in a night just for their pacifier, right? So trying to figure that out. And, biologically, women are more in tune to some of those subtle things. My husband can sleep through any of the kids crying. Like, he's just gifted in that way. But I thought that was just him until I started talking to all these moms. I'm like, oh no, this is like a dude thing. This is a superpower they have. But biologically, it makes a ton of sense. Like, moms had to know when we were living in little huts and caves and communities, right? Like, we had to be protecting our babies while the dudes were protecting the family. And so just realizing that we're trying to fight something that's biological and that that's not when we're going to win is very freeing for a lot of women. So what's happening on the cellular level is completely separated from what you're dealing with, though, on the relational level. And so biologically in our cells, we're having dips in estrogen. We're potentially having changes in progesterone and testosterone, which are all hormones that impact how we show up in the world. Both postpartum and perimenopause are fluctuating times for hormones. And this would be really great information that we were all taught in 7th grade health, but none of us were taught it, and our moms didn't talk about it. And so you're starting to hear a lot more in the past few years about this, but historically, it's not something that women even talked about. It was just, you had to deal with it. And it was just part of being a human and suck it up and move on. And the Good news is that's not true. And number two is we can help each other a lot more when we share our struggles.
Yeah, I agree 100%, especially in the sharing part. That's why I'm excited to have this conversation. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions about this again. I want to make sure kind of the gist of what I would love for this conversation to be is a guide for men to better understand and support, because I don't think that conversation happens enough in women, and it damn sure doesn't happen enough for men to understand some level of, hey, how do we show up better to support in that situation? Again, I'm going to do some assuming here, so jump in
Please.
if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But I would tend to assume a lot of women in this scenario don't really even know what the heck is going on. Again, this whole weird Civil War thing happening.
Mm-hmm.
So how, as a man, are you supposed to know how to properly support that if the woman doesn't even know what's happening, right? As a man, you want to be able to be like super logical. Someone on this show once described the difference between men and women's brains as spaghetti versus waffles. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before.
That's fair. I can follow you there.
So whereas men typically like really structure things in neat little boxes, women kind of have a lot going on all at the same time. And we tend to assume, hey, it's this black and white, very logical thing, and it just isn't, right? So part of this conversation I want to have is really to just give perspective to some of the stuff that's happening. Again, if we start right at childbirth, we start right, hey, that kid comes out, life changes, right? There's no denying that. And it changes a lot for everybody. But typically, I think what's going on here is a lot of women will just assume, hey, life is crazier now because I have a kid, and not necessarily connect it to all of the stuff happening behind the scenes that's now making it even more infinitely more difficult. Is that?
I think that's really fair. Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at this. And one of the things that I find fascinating, and I'm going to use a lot of my own stories. So recognizing that our stories are not indicative of everyone, right? But I think being vulnerable will give people a better perspective of where I'm coming from. I remember when I was in labor with my first child, and we're in the hospital room, and the contractions, all the messiness of birth. But my husband is sitting in a recliner next to me, and he falls asleep and he's snoring. That just to me lit up I threw a pillow at him. I was like, how can you snore when I'm in all this pain, right? But I think that's the same thing that happens now. My kid's 12 and I don't ask for help. And in that situation, he couldn't do a whole lot, right? But he was sleeping. It was the idea he was doing nothing. And I think that this happens both to men and women. Both partners in the exchange do this to each other without realizing, you're sleeping, you're snoring, I'm drowning, I need help. And I think there's been many people who have wisely pointed out, sometimes women don't need you to do something, and the action thing is just saying, I'm here, I'm supporting you, whatever you need me to do that looks like. That's wonderful. But that depends on and assumes that the woman knows what to ask for. And if you're a first-time mom, if you're working inside or outside the home, you don't know, because as a society, what have we done? We've divorced community raising children. 1,000 years ago, you grew up in a community. Your mom, your aunt, your cousins, everybody disciplined you, and they disciplined all of the other kids, right? It was a community event. We don't do that anymore. At least not in the United States. We don't have a lot of communities living together, doing life together 24/7, 365. So there's a loss there that can't be replaced by a husband, a man, whoever. It's not supposed to be, but that doesn't mean they can't lean in and we can't remodel and say, hey, this is what we want to do going forward. So for our family, what's been really helpful is when my husband, he doesn't come in and he's like, let me fix this, but he will come in and he'll just say, I see you're having a hard day, or I see that you're struggling. Do you have anything I can do? Because otherwise this is what I'm going to do I think would help. I'm going to do the trash. I'm going to take the boys for a run. I'm going to go get the grocery, whatever the thing is. He's just going to say, I'm going to do this unless you have something else you want me to do. And just speaking into that seems so simple, but so few of us do it. And in the reverse, I don't know that I do it to him, right? So I do not want this to be like a bashing the dude conversation, because I don't think that's at all helpful either. But I do think it takes a certain level of women saying, yes, I need help, and this is what that help looks like right now. And maybe it's just holding the baby so I can go walk on the treadmill. Maybe it's, giving the baby a bottle so that I can go sleep for 30 minutes, or that I can go get my nails done. Do you know how stressful it is to take an infant to get your nails done? Like super stressful, like silly little things. But I think any of those, whatever it looks like in that relationship, showing up to the degree that's in your character and in your comfort zone. And I say comfort zone because no one's going to go do the extreme crazy hard thing that they haven't done the multiple steps toward first. So you're not going to see someone who never had a role model step into this extreme amazing dad because they don't know what it looks like if they haven't studied it, if they haven't seen it, right? So in these conversations, being able to say, what does that look like in your life when you're both working outside the home, or where one of you's in the home and one of you's out of the home? Those types of really vulnerable moments make an impact on both people. And that only betters the kid too, making it a ripple effect.
I agree. And I think a big part of that, at least the way that I see it, is in the communication of things. When you talk about example of like, hey, your husband can do the groceries, take the kids for a run, etc. At least again, from my perspective, a lot of what I see in men specifically is their unwillingness to step up and do that thing because they feel they are not getting another thing in return from the woman. Right. And again, if we're just speaking in generalities here. So it almost seems like, hey, I'm not going to go out of my way to do this for you because right now, what are you doing for me? And obviously, I'm sure that goes both ways. It's not just men to women. I'm sure it's women to men as well. But obviously, that's not productive. Right. So there needs to be this level of understanding. And I think that's a really hard thing to do, especially like we said before, again, I'll speak for myself, for a man to say, hey, I am understanding of your situation where you're at. You can't give yourself grace and space right now. How are you going to show up for me? Yeah. And I think that's a really super powerful thing that once you understand it and you see, hey, right now I can see my wife is struggling in this area. It's ridiculous of me to have an expectation for her to show up extra for me when she can't even show up for herself. So the best thing that I can do is not sit here and be transactional. It's to say, hey, I'm going to go first. I'm going to show up in a way for you that can help you have that space and grace you need to figure out whatever you got going on. Because in the long run, this thing goes on over the course of many, many years, hopefully, right? Eventually it all evens out.
Right.
Does that track?
I do. I think there's seasons where each person has a different role or heaviness with the child, if you will. Heaviness might not be the right word, but closeness and intimacy. I have 6-year-old identical boys, and they are 110% testosterone 110% of the time. Like, they are always on, and it's exhausting, right? When they were infants, it wasn't that terrible, if you will, because there's still 2 of them, but it's a lot of work and it's fine. But now, like, I can't be their dad. I am just trying to keep them alive because they're trying to kill themselves, right? And then how do you stop them from doing that in real life? Well, that's a dude thing. And so also recognizing the unique role like each of us has. In general, women are more nurturing. And in general, dads help kids evolve into risk takers, right? Like, I don't want my kid taking risks. They might get hurt. But that doesn't mean that that is 100% true for 100% of people. So also just giving each partner space. And hopefully this was talked about before the kid came. Like, what does a good dad look like? And in my own journey, I realized what a good mom looked like for me was very different than what I had defined it subconsciously by. And my husband had to have that same journey. And I do think what you're saying tracks. And the fundamental issue, I think, is we don't take the time to define things. So then we get all upset and mad when life is messy. And it's like, well, you didn't define what success looked like. Why are you surprised? And if we can all just take a step back, like basic parenting or marriage classes, I feel like we should talk about those things. What does it look like? So that we can be aligned when stuff gets hard and yucky.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's kind of the beauty of conversations like this, right? Where we can show up and share our experiences to give someone else perspective. And I want to highlight something you said there, 2 words, for me, right? When you're talking about what does it mean for you? And I think that that's almost the most important part of being a great parent, a great partner, is understanding that like it is not a textbook definition of how to be a great mom or dad.
Right.
It really depends on your children, what your children need, because every child is going to be different. They're going to have different emotions, different needs, right? And that can vary child to child. So how do you be a great parent for that child? And how do you do it in conjunction with your partner, right? So let's say, how do you show up as a great mom will depend on what your kids need and what your husband defines and what your husband needs, right? And vice versa. So it's this partnership thing. It's not, again, a textbook definition. I think that there are so many people who are holding themselves to a standard of whatever they believe a great mom or dad is going to be. Yeah. It creates this tension, right? Either it's tension between the partners or even tension internally.
Yes.
Now they're fighting a whole different beast.
Right. And it's distracting from their whatever they are aligned on. And it's interesting, too, that you pointed out, like, for the good mom story, it is what the kids need. It's what the mom defines, but you did mention too, it's what the dad defines. And I think there is something there that we don't like to acknowledge as women, which is, why does it matter what dad thinks a good mom is, right? Like, why should that? He has his mom. I'm not his mom. So why does it matter what he thinks a good mom? And I think we are very, as a feminist tendency of mindset, we tend to dismiss that. But I do think you can't co-parent even very well if you don't understand each person's perspective. And if my husband thinks that a good mom does A, B, C, and I don't, then we need to talk about that. And hopefully it was before we became parents, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's in the messy now, right? I'm looking at this and saying, I hear that that's what's important to you. I will do my best to honor and respect that, but that's not where I'm aligned at. And where can we meet? Because we want to stay aligned together for our children. Like, what does that look like?
100%. And I would say, the same thing goes vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be that you have to necessarily obey every command of theirs, right? You're not a slave to one another.
Right.
But kind of understanding what's important to each other allows you to at least have the conversation. Because I think when you look at what makes great parents, right, as a cohesive unit, they are aligned on the same goals.
Yes.
They might have different ways of getting there,
right,
but they understand, hey, mom and dad can do different things, right, or whatever the situation is going to be.
Yep.
Each parent's going to give something a little bit different. That doesn't make one better or worse.
Correct.
Right? When in our own family, when our kids want to play, they come to dad.
Yeah.
Dad does most of the fun, goofy play stuff. And for a while, that made mom frustrated. Hey, why do you go to dad? Right? It's our relationship. But when they fall down and scrape their knee, who do they run to? They run to mom.
Right.
And it's that nurturing aspect. And it doesn't make one of us better or worse. Right. But that's a conflict point, right? I think for a lot of parents to figure out who's better or worse, none of you and both of you at the same time.
Exactly. And giving each other the freedom to grow, because who you were or what you thought was good 10 years ago may not be the same. Just like what your child needed at 2 is not the same as 12. I mean, I've heard it said that teenagers are just toddlers in big bodies, and maybe that's true, but just the human nature, we need each other. And when we have that tension and conflict rather than finding common ground, there's going to be fighting. And when is fighting for the sake of fighting healthy? There are things to fight for, right? But not just for the sake of fighting, not to show that I'm right, you're wrong. I just don't buy that.
And I personally, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, obviously, for me, I think the solution to that is communication. So communication is like one of my favorite words ever. And I feel like the more that people can communicate without the expectation of being proven right or wrong. And I think that's a really big part, right? There's a lot of times when you have conversation as parents, as partners, as even friends, as just humans, a lot of times there's an expectation that you're defending your position. Or you're looking out for, hey, this is the way I feel, so I'm going to communicate this thing, judge how you feel about it. And I think if you can remove that and just speak about, hey, what is the thing that you're doing?
Yes.
It solves a lot of tension. Do you see the same thing?
I do. And I see this interestingly more on my patients right now. My kids aren't quite old enough that I've seen it play out in my home life. But because I deal with so many women who are in the age span they are, it's very common that I hear about affairs and divorce and remarriages and all the relationships. And when I start really trying to dig into this and understanding what's driving this, communication is a fundamental thing. And they will acknowledge this. And I get the impression because some of their now ex-husbands I also care for, they tell me it's just communication, right? And it's a really interesting lens when I have those two partner couples in the practice, because I can't tell either one what they're talking about, right? Like, these are distinct private conversations. But I am a fly on the wall in some ways because I'm hearing both sides of it, and I can see they both see the problem. They both agree it's a communication problem. But then they're not willing to take a step back and say, where can we meet? And for me, that's challenged my own learning and my own relationship when I am having discord with my husband, is to be like, listen, my end goal is not to have our relationship dissolve. So let's find the points here we can meet in the middle. Where can we resolve conflict? And where can we support each other in disagreement? There are things we are going to just disagree on, period, end of story. And we can respect each other, and we can teach our children what respectful dialogue looks like. And we can even say, mom has strong feelings about this, dad doesn't. And instead of the children feeling like, well, we're going to split mom and dad because we're going to pull dad to aggravate mom and vice versa, which children do very well, we start to say, it shows them we disagree and we're a team. We are still aligned and our goals haven't changed even though we disagree. And I think that is a beautiful example that can happen in the family that then expands to the workplace, the church, the communities, whatever it is, the sports teams, and just ripples out. And it's frustrating that something like that isn't taught in a way that's distinct and elevated in our educational systems.
Amen. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that goes, when two people in a business always agree, one of them is unnecessary.
Yes.
Right? And the kind of premise behind that is, if both of you agree on everything, what is the point of having two of you there if I'm going to get the same opinion regardless?
Right.
And I feel like there's this expectation in marriage, in being a parent, where you guys have to agree on everything. Otherwise, it means you're fighting with each other.
Yes.
And how do you avoid that?
I don't know that you can do it perfectly, but I think the first step is being intentional to acknowledge that it could be happening or may not be happening. And there was a time in our marriage where we did consider divorce. It was a very rocky period, a very painful period. And the way we got through it was the conversations. And some of them were with the counselor, but 80-90% of them were at 3 a.m. when I was working night shift, and he'd come up to the hospital and I had a break and we talk. So it's a commitment from both people to do uncomfortable things and hard things in ways that aren't traditional. I mean, if you think about it, I don't know many men or women who say, I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. to go talk to my spouse on their night shift in the hospital, right? Like, you don't hear that, but that's driven by his commitment to make it work. And, I think it goes both ways. And I honor him in that, because I don't know, honestly, if the roles were reversed, would I have done that? And so I do think that at least one, if not both of the partners, has to have an awareness and some wisdom and be intentional, and also be set up to be rejected, because sometimes you're just, I don't know, so tired, for example, that you can't in your own power do that anymore. And one of the beautiful things, there's a Proverbs, I don't remember where it exactly at, but it talks about if two men are walking and they're both blind, they both fall into the pit, right? So if one of them at least has their eyes open and is using some wisdom, the other one has a chance of not falling. And it goes both ways at different times. There's been times that I've been able to speak wisdom into my husband's life and be like, are you really going to do that? Because that doesn't align with what you've told me about this. And so giving each other permission to say hard things and not be offended, for me, is a lifelong constant renewal. It wasn't when we said our vows. It was every single day from then. And I will tell you, I do it very imperfectly, but I am aware of it and I am trying to be more intentional. And I believe that momentum builds and stacks over time. Again, I talked about couples I've seen split up. I've seen couples stay together too. And the ones who've stayed together are the ones who did the hard, messy stuff, even though both of them at the same time couldn't always see the light. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage. I don't think we give each other enough credit for the hard, messy, emotional, mental stuff we do.
If you had to speak even personally, through your own experience, saying that you've considered divorce before, looking at your relationship now, do you think that you connect at a deeper level? You have a better relationship now than you did before that phase?
Absolutely. I think the intimacy is different. And I don't mean intimacy simply in a sexual way. I think there's a deeper being seen and known by somebody for all the yucky. And I think that pain in some ways glues you together. It doesn't always, but it did for us. And for our story, a part of it was because we had said that we believe a certain thing in our faith and we are going to stick with that, and that's going to be our kind of guiding rock. And we had that something to stake on. I don't know, I couldn't speak to all the others for answering this question, but I know in my own life it absolutely made a difference, because we could solidly say this is the one thing we agree on and we will figure the rest out based on this foundation. And because we had that, we could then hold each other accountable, because we both said we agree. We're all in on this one thing. And it's not a 50-50, it's 100 and 100, right? It is not enough to say, I've done my share for the day, you pick up the rest of it. We both have to be able to say it's all either all in or all out, because this mediocre compromising is what makes people miserable and harms them.
Yeah, and I agree. It's that lukewarm, right? That lukewarm is gross. Either be all in or all out. And I think there are so many people who sit in lukewarm thinking that they are saving something or it's better than nothing. Right. And what winds up happening is it ends up just staying lukewarm and then falling apart.
And teaching, especially if you have children, it's teaching them that lukewarm is acceptable. And I would challenge, is it actually acceptable? Like, if you really are honest with yourself in your gut, do you feel like lukewarm is okay? And if you do, then own that. But most people, when I challenge them on that, I say, is that really true? Do you really think that in your core? Or is that what kind of is just coming up for you automatically? And a lot of times they're like, yeah, you're right. I need to think about this more. And if that's the greatest gift I can do, is to tell somebody, really? Is that true? Then I'm all in. But that is not what I thought I would be doing when I went to medical school, right? Yeah. It's so different.
So let me pose a scenario here, because there is going to be someone listening who right now all that they could possibly give is lukewarm at best.
Yeah.
Right? Because they are spread so freaking thin. They're having that civil war we talked about, where the best they could possibly give is lukewarm.
Yeah.
And I think it's a point where I want to make sure that we handle the nuance correctly.
Yes.
Because it's not to say that, hey, when you're in that phase, lukewarm isn't good enough. I think the nuance point says communicate with your partner, hey, this is where I'm at. This is the best I could possibly do right now in this period, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And I think, again, that's where we fall back to that communication.
Yes.
Not just that lukewarm is the worst ever,
Right.
but hey, if lukewarm is all you got, let
right.
me be the heat to your
100%.
supply.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's a really valuable add, because many people, what I don't want people to hear in this conversation is I have it figured out. Because I'm telling you right now, here and today, I am struggling. This is a rough period in our life, and we are going through some really tough times with one of our kids. And I told my husband several weeks ago when this started, I just looked at him, I was like, I feel like I've got nothing left to give. And he said something similar. He's got tears in his eyes, and he's like, tells his dad, this is the worst period of our life ever. And these difficult times happen, and there's purpose in them, but we don't always see that purpose while we're going through them. I still don't see the purpose. Praying this morning, I'm like, God, this sucks. Make this go away, because like I can't. But finding grace, having somebody with you that supports you and says, yeah, I know it sucks. I hear you. And it's going to get better, right? And maybe it's ice instead of hot water. I don't know, right? It's going to be one or the other. But where I get bothered by lukewarm is when we say we want change, but then we do nothing. If you want change and you're not there yet, that's different than saying, I just don't care. Take it or leave it.
Yeah. So let's go on that for a second, because I think there's a lot of people who want change, but a couple things happen in that spot, right? Change is super scary.
Yes.
It's often easier to stay where you are, even though where you are right now sucks and is uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's better than, at least in that mindset, it's better than the fear of the unknown, right? Because it feels super big and scary to have that conversation or whatever else. But then there's also the perspective of like, hey, I don't even know what to do. I can't figure myself out. How am I supposed to figure us out? Right. So what do you do in that state?
Yeah. When I figure that out, I'll become famous. Okay. So I'll tell you how I'm working through it, because again, this is a tough spot. So we have 4 of our own kids, and we're fostering a 5th who's a 4-month-old baby right now. And on top of that, we homeschool one of our kids, and I own a business and we work. So it is absolutely tough. And one of the things that has helped me over the years, and as a family we're trying to do a better job at, is what are our values? Really defining what's important to us, not what everyone tells us is important to us. And so if that means that we need to let things go, we can do that with blessing, knowing that what served us in the past may not serve us today, and it may come back in the future. What do I mean by that specifically? For us, our defining, for me, I'll just nail it down to myself: family, faith, fitness. Those are my 3 tops. And if something doesn't align with those, and you'll notice I didn't say business, but if it doesn't align with those, then I don't have the space, the mental capacity, the energy, the money, the time to give to it right now. And so being very, very firm on boundaries. And I don't know if your audience will resonate so much with boundaries. I know a lot of my women, female patients do, because so many of them tend toward people pleasing, whether that's innate or environmental. I'll let you guys decide. But men don't seem to have such a problem with this. They don't appear to have a struggle in saying, yeah, no, just no. I see this play out in health. Like if I tell a dude, you got to change your lifestyle because your cholesterol is way too high and I'm going to put you on a medicine if you don't, 3 months later, he's in great shape and he's doing all the things, right? If I tell a woman that and 3 months later, she's like, when did you actually think I was going to get anything done? Like, let's be real. And it's just such a difference in how we define and create boundaries. But if we understand what's important to us, then we can start with that. And then if we accept that that's actually normal to say no, we give each other a lot of freedom and grace. Not sure if that's where you wanted to go, but that's where I went.
No, I love it. And, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said there. I don't think that there is one specific answer to that. Right? Again, we can go back to any of the things we talked about is the honesty, the communication, the showing up for each other. I think it's the type of thing where you really just need to be honest in the moment. Just, again, that grace and space part is so incredibly important to say, hey, I don't know the answer. I know that we are both committed to serving our family and having those core values. And one of my good friends always says, your core values mean nothing if they're only on the wall.
That's right.
That is one of my favorite things that he's ever told me.
Yes.
And it's difficult sometimes, I think, for us as parents, as leaders in our house, to communicate the core values if we don't even know what they are to ourselves.
Correct.
Right? So where does that line up for you in showing up for yourself first? Because I feel like a lot of people feel like that's selfish, right? And especially I'd love your perspective as a woman, as a mother, as a wife.
Yeah.
And how do you not put everybody else above yourself? And how do you fill up your own cup first right? Because there's this saying, hey, if you're not good for yourself, how could you be good for others? And I feel like it's super important to have that conversation. So let's go there next.
Yeah. There's a ton of layers on that for me because also of the healthcare space and how often I tell people to do something and then I go home and I don't necessarily do the same thing, right? And there have been times in my life that I have walked into an exam room and the patient visibly looks shocked when they see me. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, you look great. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. What happens when I do what I tell you to do, right? Because it's so easy to not take care of yourself. And when you're running the kids to school, even if you're just packing their lunches, right? Like there's a component of thinking that goes into that and steals some of your energy. Then it's like, I got to get a shower today. Did I take a shower today or was it yesterday? Like you got to think about that. And some of this is so manual instead of automated that we spend way too much energy on the things that don't matter. And part of filling that cup for me is creating rhythms and automaticities. And so my calendar, my nurse practitioner once told me, if I ever have to see your calendar again, I'm going to have a seizure. It's going to give me epilepsy from looking at all the different things intertwining and all the different colors. That works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. But on my calendar, I actually have to commit that I am going to do a certain amount of physical activity on this day at this time, just like I would if I was seeing a patient. Because if I don't have that rhythm and that set time, it won't happen. And similarly, if you new moms, I think, are the hardest. And I say new mom just meaning a new baby. It could be the fifth kid, it could be the first kid. But there's a new constant on that you have to be for that kid, and you don't get to go do all the physical fitness or eat the healthy foods, and you're just munching on whatever Cheetos you randomly bought 3 a.m. when you were exhausted and weren't thinking about it. Those types of nuances are real life for most people, and everyone has their own story. Those are just a couple of examples I'm going to give you. On the flip side, how do you take care of yourself partly goes into how do you commit to other people and how do you invest in other people. And part of me taking care of myself is investing in my husband so that he can turn around and support me. It goes both ways. And you were asking earlier, like, what do dads need to do? How they need help? Sometimes it's the kids they need to be tucked in for bed, right? Or at least told to go to bed. If I'm feeding the baby, I don't want to yell down the hall, go to bed, right? Like I'm trying to get the baby to sleep. So having him be even attuned to the fact it's 8:30 and the little kids need to be in bed, super helpful. But investing in that and telling him this is my expectation. This is what it looks like. This is what our rhythm needs to be. We don't need to eat out at 7 o'clock because we didn't plan for dinner at 5:36 or whatever. And that, going back to your communication, setting up expectations and having clear boundaries together are part of what for me helped me fill my cup. If I go through the day and I don't start my day with Bible reading and prayer, I just have a horrible day. Other people, I've heard them, if they don't go to the gym, they have a horrible day. If they don't go and do their morning walk through the neighborhood and greet all the people, everyone has their thing. And so knowing your thing is the essential first step. And the frank truth is, it took me a long time to figure out what my thing was. I did not grow up knowing this from 5th grade on. It's a lot of experimentation. It's a lot of failure. It's a lot of saying, well, that didn't work, or I haven't figured it out yet, and keep trying. And that's where it can be very discouraging for a lot of people. I've been discouraged in that way.
I would tend to imagine finding your thing, right? This version you have of your thing right now. And I say that specifically because it is a version.
Yep.
In 10 years from now, your thing will have evolved.
Correct.
Right? And if we rewind 5-10 years, however many years you want to put on that.
Correct.
Your thing started with, let me just do this one specific thing because I'm not feeling it right now. Let's do one thing.
Right.
And it started with that little spark, right? Because I feel like there's an expectation that people need to just instantly snap their fingers and tomorrow have all of the answers.
Exactly.
And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have that, right? But it isn't that instant. It's this evolution over time.
Correct. It is a transformation over time. And I wish more people heard that. So far in our conversation, the two things they take away from is it takes a long time and you've got to be clear in your communication to yourself and with the people around you about what you're trying to get to, because it is so critical to understand where you're going and what success looks like to get there.
The time passes, though.
It does.
And I say that obviously like the answer is yes, but just thinking out loud, one of the things we tell ourselves in that moment is this is going to take forever, so I might as well never do it. But you look back, right? You mentioned you have 12-year-old kids. Our son just turned 12 a week and a half ago. Like, I look back at this and I remember like it was yesterday that he was just born.
Right.
And what's happened in my life and our family's lives in 12 years is insane.
Right.
But it happened like that. And you look forward to the future.
Yes.
Guess what? The same thing is going to happen again.
Right.
So if you kind of just focus on, hey, how do I How do I make this next step? Not
Yes.
even today.
Yes.
Not even how do I win today? How do I just
Yes.
do this next thing in
Right.
the direction I want to go?
Correct.
Keep it simple and then just repeat that over and over again. And
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're going to fail a lot in that
Yes.
process. The key is just continuing to just move forward and show up.
And understanding you're supposed to fail. That is
Yes.
100% supposed to happen. Nothing went wrong. You figured out what didn't work and you move forward. And I lead a small group for 7th and 8th graders at our church. And one of the things that they talk about a lot, because 7th and 8th grade's yucky. It's really a miserable time in life for a lot of kids. And they'll talk about how they just want to do the right thing. And so I think there's a human element that I resonate with there that I hear in my adult patients, which is just tell me the next best thing to do. Tell me the one little tiny thing I can do to move forward. And I cannot remember who to credit, but I've read a book about the 1% change. You increase every day, you just focus on the 1%. And over a year, that exponentially grows to like 35, 37% or something. So the math wizards can tell us what the right answer is. But the point is, you just in a year, focusing on only 1% a day. And there's going to be a day you forget it, right? And maybe it's a negative 1%. Like, let's be real. But if in general you say, this is the one thing I want 1% better. And what does that look like? Maybe if you're trying to lose weight, it looks like I'm just going to go for a 5-minute walk after one meal once a day. And that's it. And that is my 1%. But gosh, in a month, maybe I'll feel enough energy to go for a walk for 10 minutes once a day after each meal. And that incremental change builds up over time, whether it's our money or our habits or our families and relationships. 1% goes a long way. And if you know who to credit, please credit them, because that is not my idea, but it resonated deeply with me.
It is very true. And, for so many people, I don't think they realize it's that simple, right? It really is just a matter of continuing to show up and continuing to just make an effort. It doesn't have to be a perfect effort. It just has to be an effort in the right direction. Right? Being willing to look silly or be embarrassed, understanding the fact that literally everyone you see is so worried and consumed by their own garbage.
Right.
They're not even thinking about you. And if they are, who cares? It's not going to change anything. And it's freeing once you get to that point.
Exactly.
But it does, I think it takes a picture of possibility. I think it takes people showing up.
Yes.
And on that note, I want to ask you this, which might be an uncomfortable question.
Let's go. Let's do
not
it.
For you necessarily.
Okay.
But I look at a lot of young kids. Okay, we'll give them an age range of 10 to 20. And you see how they show up in life. You see either the decisions that they make, their perspectives, things that they exhibit. And oftentimes you can trace it back to what's going on in the home. How is mom and dad showing up? Are mom and dad even in the home? What does the house look like? Do they have role models? And one of the things that I see so freaking much is it's easy to kind of fudge it when your kids are just born. In the first couple of years, even though they are learning a lot, it's a little easier to fudge because they're not as mobile, they're not really talking back, they're not understanding deep concepts. So a lot of people kind of fudge it. And then what happens over time is like that time moves so fast between the ages of 6 and 16.
Yes.
You don't realize it, but before you know, they've picked up on who you are.
Yes.
And I say all of this as encouragement for the parents listening to start handling your business, to start looking at, hey, who am I and how am I showing up in the world? And it doesn't have to be this like super negative thing, right? No one has to know but you. It's this encouragement for you to look at yourself and how you're showing up.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen if you don't, and again, I don't want this to be grim and depressing. I want this to be encouraging, is if you don't, at some point in the future, you're going to look at your kids and you're going to have lost relationship with them. You're going to wonder, why are they hanging out with that crap? Why are they taking influence from these people? Why aren't they respecting me as a parent? It's because they've witnessed over the past 10 years that you don't respect yourself. You don't show up for yourself. You don't do the things you say you're going to do. And it's solvable. If you start today, you can give them that example of followable excellence by what does it look like for you to keep your word, for you to live with core values, right? That example of followable excellence, if they have it in the home, they're not going out there and looking for it elsewhere. They see it. They've grown up with what it means to have self-worth, to have self-confidence. And I think, I don't know how well I explained that. You tell me.
No, actually.
But to me, I just want it to be encouragement for someone as a parent to let today be the day that you decide to put some meaning to the moment and start making your life the best possible example. Use it as a redemption story. Use it as a picture of possibility. Use it whatever you could possibly use it as.
Yes.
But give your kids an example of what it looks like to show up for yourself continually, and they will have an example to follow.
I really love that you said that. And if nothing else, you encouraged me. So thank you. I really I don't know if you did this intentionally or not, but the word encouragement means to come alongside one and to support one, right? And I love that you framed that word with your intent, because so many times most of us are trained to hear it as a criticism. These are the things you did wrong. Now your kid's mimicking you. You created this mess. Dig yourself out of it. And that's part of our like American heritage. I feel like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? But we're talking about human beings with real feelings and big emotional, probably physical and mental ramifications over decades, and then affecting all the people they impact. And again, just in the spirit of vulnerability and sharing with your audience that I don't have it figured out at all, it resonates so deeply with me, because one of the things I've noticed in this journey we're on with one of our kids is this insane desire to prove that they're right. And I think partly that comes from my husband and I. He's an attorney, I'm a physician. We can't afford to be wrong in our businesses, right? But that is partly how we've defined ourselves. And so even if it's not an argument, there's like this emphasis on this is the answer for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons. And so when there is conflict with the child, seeing ourselves mirrored back, but the ugly side of the good that we have become good in, right? And looking at that. And so for me, where I was really encouraged is I've been trying to, with my kids specifically, just say, listen, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I wish I had done this. And this is what, to me, success looks like for this situation. And I failed. I blew it. And I'm going to try again. And a lot of times I get an eye roll for another argument or a deflection, but this isn't about necessarily them in that moment. It's about me becoming the better person and growing into who I need to be a better parent, and to show them in my home that this is what the other side looks like and this is how you get there.
Right.
And that takes a lot of work too. That's emotionally draining, especially if you've already been at work all day, right? And so
Yeah.
I hope that encourages somebody too, because that is one thing as humans we could use a lot more of, is some hope and encouragement.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really difficult line to walk for a lot of people, because it, to me, is not the type of thing that you can teach. You have to kind of live and let
Yes.
your kids just watch.
Yes.
And I say it's really difficult and a thin line to walk, because you don't want to make your children your therapist, right? That should never be
Right.
the case.
Correct.
But I do believe that you should share the real world as much as you can in a relatively safe way, with them realizing, hey, dad had a huge problem at work today, dad failed, dad messed up. Or this situation happened, dad made a wrong decision.
Right.
Okay? These are the ramifications of that. And I feel like when you start to do that in a way that's, again, not teaching, because when you teach, they're not going to want to listen.
Correct.
But when they just see it as normal,
Yes.
hey, dad messed up. All right, cool. Dad didn't fail.
Right.
Dad found a way that didn't work. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to
That's
regroup.
right.
We're going to push forward.
Yes.
Right? They start to understand, hey, that's what normal looks like.
Right.
And again, I say it's not the type of thing you can teach. You have to live and let them watch.
Right.
So encouragement, again, for you to continue just to show up as openly, organically, and naturally as possible, and let them witness you.
Yeah.
Let permission to just be you,
Yes.
and let them just watch. And I feel like we have this expectation as parents that we have to like instill values and teach our kids all this stuff. Most of us don't know the answers to begin with.
Right.
So like,
We haven't
what are
learned
we
it
doing?
ourselves.
So why don't we instead just focus on, hey, being the best version of ourselves and letting people watch?
Yeah.
To me, I feel like there's a way simpler, probably scarier, but a way simpler way to just continue to elevate the people around us by elevating ourselves in a humble way.
And just being brave enough to ask the question of, is this working? Is this really actually working? Because and I think it's a Japanese proverb that talks about how the best place to get off the train going down the wrong tracks is the next station, right? You still have to turn around, but like when you realize it, get off the track, turn around, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that, for whatever reason, that was part of your story. It wasn't where you thought your story was going, but it doesn't make it wrong. It was there for a reason. It was there to teach you something. And what can you learn and grow from? And sometimes I find myself telling my 10-year-old, well, that didn't work out the way I thought it would. Right. And I'm really frustrated, but this is what I'm going to do different. And he kind of looks at me like, okay, mom. But I think that's helpful, because then at least somewhere in his subconscious someday, I hope that comes back to him where he makes a mistake. He's like, wait, I saw my mom and she said that didn't work out like I thought it was going to, and I'm going to try again anyway.
The other half of the proverb or saying, whatever you want to call it, is the longer you wait on that train, the more expensive the return ticket is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't think about that part a lot. When you look at a lot of adults,
Yes.
I'm going to make an assumption here. You probably have more understanding than I do. But I believe a lot of the adults that we look at are just older kids that have never really handled the junk that they got from their parents. And we are now passing this on to our own kids.
Right.
And so if you don't handle your demons, you're going to let
Right.
those demons handle your kids. And again, that's a super scary thing to think about. But it's the truth. Like, again, encouragement to go out there and figure your stuff out.
Right.
Don't have to be perfect.
Right.
But like, go talk to someone, get someone in your corner who can help you navigate that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's not just going to go away.
Right.
You're going to pass that on to your kids, and they're going to have to deal with it too.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying here. One of the, I'm going to call pitfalls that I see in people who are trying to make that step is sometimes we just assume therapy is the only option. And there have been times therapy helped me immensely. And there's times that therapy just kept me in the same place. And so when you say go find someone, it might be your doctor, it might not, it might be your priest, it might not. But a coach, somebody who's got the same lived experience and is on the other side. Fascinating to me. I don't know if guys have this, but in my neck of the woods, we have a ton of Facebook moms groups. And it's fascinating just to watch the questions that come up and how the responses are. And there's a lot of noise. But what's interesting is there are people who emerge from that, who have the lived experience and can help you. And so I just don't buy this idea that there's no one who can help me. There's always someone, but it may take a little bit more work to find them, and it may take being creative. I hate Facebook, but I'll go to Facebook to read those moms groups because I find things there that are interesting and valuable to me as a person.
I would 100% co-sign the idea of therapy for people. I think, to me, though, and you brought up a good point, is how do you define what therapy is?
Yes.
Right, because a lot of people think, hey, I have to go lay on some weird person's couch and complain for half an hour, and they're going to just nod and write in a book, and I'm going to leave, and it's going to be awkward and uncomfortable, and it's going to suck. That doesn't have to be what therapy is. Therapy could be going for a walk with a good friend.
Yes.
It could be reading a book. It could be a lot of different things, right? But it's that exchange of ideas, often the venting of, hey, what are you dealing with, and looking for perspective on it.
Yes.
Go do it. Have conversations with friends. Go to your church's, community group. Just go do some stuff, right? And be willing to share and let that out.
Yeah.
And you'll find oftentimes it will really help.
It does. And what I have found looking through the physician lens is you need to commit to doing that process for at least 90 days. 30 days isn't long enough. A year is too far away. Focus on 90 days. Get through it. If you're going to do the walking in nature thing, you might not pick November to start, but do a time that makes sense to you. But pick whatever your thing is for 90 days and make it an experiment. Make it okay to fail. We're going to try this for 90 days. In 90 days, I'll reevaluate. If it didn't work, I'm going to move on. Take the emotion out of it. And the therapeutic benefit is huge when you can look at it through that logical lens, which I'm totally envious of all the dudes having that superpower. But when we can separate emotion from it, it does make a big difference.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for this conversation. It has been a true pleasure. So thank you again for everything that you do, not only for this conversation, but for all the work you do outside of here. I want to make sure you understand how much of a difference it makes.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And
showing up.
I do hope it's valuable to somebody, and value is an interesting thing because it's defined by the person receiving it, right? And so the encouragement and the keep going, keep looking, definitely love that. And thank you for letting me be here and talk to your audience and you today. It's a pleasure and appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Where can we find you going forward? Where can we kind of best support you from here?
Yeah, so you could obviously go to the website, vitalitymwc.org. If you're a social guru, my handles are at Dr. Amy Tiffany. I have a special offer for any of your listeners who are or know someone who's recently postpartum, and that is my book, The Postpartum Pivot. They can contact us on the website or social, and we will send them a free copy. So nice little thing to help get you through the mud and the stickiness. It does not have to be for you yourself, though. So if you are a guy and you know somebody who could benefit, pass it on. Share the love.
I will add some context there, though, because I think this one might be super important. If you know someone who's really struggling, please do not throw a book at them and say, here, go fix yourself.
Correct.
Because
that
will not be received well.
They might throw it back at you.
How do you handle that?
Yes. And so let's be clear. If somebody gave me this book right when I'd had a kid and said, here, happy birthday, right? I'm going to be like, are you kidding me? Like, this is worthless to me. But there is a time when you can lean into someone and come along as an encouragement and say, hey, you said you were trying to lose weight after that baby. This might be an option for you. If you don't like it, you pass it on. Definitely do not throw anything and try to fix somebody. There's nothing more irritating to me when someone comes up and says, ooh, let me fix that for you. Get out of my space, right? So, but if it is helpful and supportive and it can benefit someone, I'm happy to send them a free copy.
Good. I love that. So again, thank you for this conversation. It was a true pleasure, and we'll be seeing you soon. Happy birthday to you.
Cha cha cha.
Happy birthday.